Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Jeff, you picked one of the worst pay-per-views in the history of professional wrestling for us to talk about. Why are you doing this to me? But first, how the hell are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. You know, we're coming off a weekend here of a lot of wrestling and things. We're like right in the season. We had Survivor Series, we got War Games, we got TLC coming up, like just all kinds of wrestling happening right now. I guess it's a good time to be a wrestling fan, and
hopefully some of it doesn't suck.
Yeah, you know, that's all we can kind of hope for at this point. And so I for sure would venture to believe that none of it is as bad as what we're about to talk about today, though. So, yeah, this is just one of those where, well, why are we doing this one? I'll start there. I picked this one. And so part of it was December, you know, and we're in December now. And so, hey, you know, and it's been a few weeks since we've talked about an ECW match, but I say talked about an ECW match. It's hard to kind of classify this one as an ECW match in a lot of ways too. So, because this is not when, you know, you being our ECW expert around here, this is not the ECW that you know and love like many people. Like
it's not your grandfather's ECW.
No, it is a shell of whatever the hell like this is. Who knows? So, yeah, I think primarily because this one, there's a lot of backstory to tell about this one because it is real garbage. Like, and so that's why we're going to talk about this one. And so where do you know, were you like watching this one when ECW? And you know, what's your stance on this?
No, I didn't pay $39.95 to order this pay-per-view. So
thank God. Yeah.
Here's the deal. I mean, this is probably going to be a fun episode because the pay-per-view sucked and we can have some fun making fun of it. But I actually think this was a decent match. I mean, you got some good guys in there. So this could be like a sneaky, half-decent Elimination Chamber match. So I don't think the match is going to suck. I think it'll actually be kind of fun to watch. But before we do that, we obviously have to make fun of the rest of the card and everything that led up to this. So before we do that, why don't you plug our shit?
You know, it's been a few weeks, and you know, you and I have been seeing it on social media. We've got a whole lot of new listeners, and so
I know it's awesome.
Yeah, it's always great stuff, and so engaging with us, and we've seen some scores getting thrown out there as well too. And so, since it's been a few weeks since we've kind of talked about this one, like of course, like we give you the deep dive into a match every Monday. It's the build, the payoff, the aftermath, what happened before, what happened about. You know, what happened during and then what happened after the match. We talk about, you know, the careers of superstars involved, all that good stuff. You know, we give, you know, some of the, I say like the big reviews, Pro Wrestling Torch, Tom's favorite, Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. This one had a lot of write-ups that I'll be sharing. I got a lot of notes because people had a lot of feelings on this match. And then we give our score, which really, you know, it's whatever the hell we want to give it for whatever reason we want to give it. And so, you know, we look at all the different pieces of it. It may not line up with what the quote unquote experts say, but you know, we kind of bring you and focus on that one match and what it's all about. And so thanks to all the new listeners. You know, that time of year, you know, people stuck at home for different reasons, lockdowns and all that, but we appreciate, you know, the fan base and everybody kind of checking us out and listening. That's for sure.
Yeah, we talk about what was going on in professional wrestling at the time. We talk about the show. We banter about the current product a little bit and some of the current going on in the business while we're watching these matches. Sometimes we bring on some guests that are really fun to watch the matches with them. So, yeah, we're having a lot of fun over here. It's hard to believe we've been doing this for almost a year and a half now. We've covered a lot of good matches. But, Jeff, I will tell you something, and I haven't even told you this yet. I bought a book. It was like I think like $2. But it was the What Culture guys. They did like the 553 matches you need to watch before you die or something.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'm going through that book and I'm finding some really good matches that we have to cover. So we got a lot more to go, buddy. We're just getting warmed up here on the payoff.
That's good stuff. I'm not to plug them too much. I'm a big fan of what they've done and over the years, and that's, they kind of kept me engaged, and so I'm sure it's a very good list. So that's good to hear. All right,
good. So with that, let's get into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
All right. So here's fun fact number 1 for the day. We're covering ECW December to Dismember 2006. And I'm not, there's no trivia here, but you got to be honest with me. Did you know that there was a December to Dismember in 1995 at the ECW arena?
I knew that one happened, and that's when I was like, oh, this is what we're going to talk about. And when I was looking it up, I was like, oh, this is not what we're talking about. Like,
so you found out during your research.
Yes.
Okay, I had no idea that there was actually a December to Dismember 1995 in Philly at the ECW arena.
Yes.
That show was headlined by the Public Enemy, the Pitbulls, and Tommy Dreamer against the Heavenly Bodies, the Eliminators, Raven and Stevie Richards in an Ultimate Jeopardy steel cage match.
That is, and so if that was 95, this predates like the Raven Tommy Dreamer stuff that we've talked about in the show.
Oh, this is way back.
Way before all this, like the early Dudley, like the Dudley brothers, all that shit. Yeah, wow.
Okay,
that's a hell of a main event too.
Fun fact number 2 for you. Guess who else was wrestling on that show?
That show? No idea.
A guy by the name of Stone Cold Steve Austin, just known as Steve Austin. He was in a 3-way with the Sandman and Mikey Whipwreck. So the Sandman wins the World Heavyweight Championship in a 3-way, being accompanied to the ring by Woman, and he defeated the champion Mikey Whipwreck, and then also Steve Austin was in that match as well.
So this was post Hollywood Blonde Stone Cold or Steve Austin, but not Stone Cold Steve Austin yet. Got it. Okay. Yikes. That's a hell of a card though. Like, I feel almost so bad that we have to say what's on this card on this 2006 event after talking about that card.
Yeah. Dudleys were on that card. Taz was on that card. Eliminators and Pitbull had a tag team match. Raven defeated Tommy Dreamer by TKO. Crazy, man. Public Enemy, Heavenly Bodies. So yeah, so that was the 95 show again that I had no idea about. So they decide to bring this title of a show back for 2006. We're in the ECW hotbed of Augusta, Georgia at the James Brown Arena. Somehow this show did 90,000 for a buy rate. Can you believe that?
The worst buy rate. Yeah.
But there were 90,000. It's so funny. You talk about like the diehards. Well, how many fans will buy whatever bullshit we put on pay-per-view or selling merchandise or whatever? The answer to your question is there in 2006 there were 90,000 diehard fans out there that would have done anything for the WWE WWF product. How about that?
Well, thank God, we do have the network nowadays, because to spend that, the like you said, the $39.99 on this show and then get what you got, I would have been pretty pissed too. But luckily, spending what we spend now, we get a lot of stinkers and, not great stuff now, but at least it's a little bit more manageable. Yeah.
All right. So are you ready for this card?
Unfortunately, let's do it. Yep.
One of the worst pay-per-views in the history of wrestling. By the way, another fun fact for you. Did you know that this at the time was the shortest pay-per-view in WWE history in terms of 3-hour pay-per-views?
I did not know it was the shortest, but I actually have some notes on that for the aftermath.
Two hours and 22 minutes.
I learned that after I was doing my research. Yes.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Opening match, the Hardy Boys defeated M&M, who, again, were Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro. That was a 22-minute match. That just seems like a long time for a tag team match.
One of the few that actually somewhat lived up to the name, but that's a low bar for this card. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Then we had Balls Mahoney defeating Matt Stryker in a Strikers Rules match in 7 minutes. We had Elijah Burke and Sylvester Turkey defeating the FBI, made up of Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke in a 6-minute tag team match. Then we had Daivari, who was accompanied by the Great Khali, defeating Tommy Dreamer in a 7-minute match. And then our second to last match, I can't really call it a semi-main event. Ariel, was it? And Kevin Thorne. Okay, Ariel defeating Kelly and Mike Knox in a 7-minute tag team match. So, I mean, this card was just terrible. And then you're like, and I can't even like rebook it and say, oh, well, you should have put this guy and that guy together. I mean, I don't know. I guess if you had to shuffle up the card, maybe you could come up with something better. But my goodness, I don't even know why you didn't at least like make the Hardy Boys in some like super extreme match or something. I mean, my God, but terrible. And then the reason we're here, we have the ECW World Champion Big Show in a extreme elimination chamber match with Bobby Lashley, Test, Rob Van Dam, Hardcore Holly, and CM Punk. So, Jeff, storyline standpoint, how did we get to this main event?
So on paper, those names,
not bad.
No, not terrible. But
I have high expectations for this match. I want to be sports entertained.
Yes. And so this would have been the last brand exclusive show for ECW. It was also, we'll talk about it after, it was the end of Heyman's run with the company. And then really it was just like, it was terrible, which we'll talk about after. So again, this event happening, it was early December 2006, but back in October, you had it was an episode of just ECW, which at the time was airing on Sci-Fi Network. Rob Van Dam beat at the time for a non-title match the ECW World Heavyweight World Champion, who was the Big Show. He'd beaten him a couple times. Big Show actually had the ECW strap since July. And so per the stipulation, you had Van Dam, since he beat Big Show again in a ladder match, he could choose the time he would face off against Big Show. So, Van Dam, since he won that match, he then chose to have the title match at December to Dismember in this pay-per-view. So, Paul Heyman, though, he was fine with that, but then he added the Extreme Elimination Chamber match, and then also adding a few other superstars. So, and it was really just kind of like qualifying matches leading up to this. And so Rob Van Dam and the Big Show would have been like kind of your core here. And then I'll start by saying you had first it was Sabu who qualified, and as you can see from the photo we've shared of this one, and then also just as we're talking, we're going to come back to Sabu, but him winning his match. Then you had the following week was CM Punk and Test qualifying, and then lastly you had Hardcore Holly, which he was given that final spot, but he ran out when there was supposed to be a contract signing. Bobby Lashley ran out when there was supposed to be the contract signing, signed before Hardcore Holly could, and that's how Bobby Lashley ended up in the match. And so now where this gets a little weird is you had
it hasn't yet.
Yeah, I know. I said where it continues to get a little weird, and how did Hardcore Holly end up back in this match after we said Sabu qualified for it? And so this is where the behind the scenes stuff really comes into play, kind of really what's happening with what's going on. Sabu has talked a lot about the kind of what happened like behind the scenes, how he felt about it, that like he was given, in his own words, he said, they didn't tell me anything. Stephanie had a 3-paragraph promo for me to memorize. I wouldn't do it. They asked me to do it live on the Monday before the show. The next day they had me out with an injury and the show went on without me. So he said, when they brought me in, they promised me that they'd keep me just as I was in ECW, but they lied. After about 3 months, they kept asking me to cut promos, paragraphs of things I would never say, and I would always cut them down to a few words. And so, like, really, it was he says that it was all, because he just wasn't getting along with management. And so that's how Hardcore Holly ended up in this match. Now, prior to this, though, it was actually at the Survivor Series pay-per-view. A lot of these guys were actually in a match together in a traditional Survivor Series match. And so you had Van Dam with Sabu, Lashley, John Cena, and Kane actually beating the Big Show, Test, Umaga, Finley, and MVP. And so, it was, I say, other than the kind of Big Show and Rob Van Dam, who had a little bit of a back and forth prior to this, some of these other people were just kind of qualifying, and that's how they kind of got into this match and why they did it. And then really, I say a normal quote unquote build with, then you do the tag matches or the Survivor Series matches, and you make them all kind of go against each other for whatever reason. That's always just been a thing. And so we got to team them up, and then they got to fight, and then there's brawls and all this other shit. And then they had that. And so, and then even like Rob Van Dam, just leading up to like the week before this pay-per-view, Rob Van Dam beating Sabu. So, just really interesting how that kind of played out. But like we said at the start here, one of the quotes that I read here was that, Extreme Championship Wrestling died in 2003. McMahon bought out the rival company that year. In 2006, he relaunched it as a brand under the WWE umbrella. As one of the kind of beat writers at the time wrote, it was a watered down, overproduced version that fit well within WWE standards, but none of those had followed the underdog promotion during its heyday.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That is the perfect characterization.
Yes. And so, we get this really, while we're talking an ECW match, please, I don't want to say, don't listen, or don't watch, definitely do that because, it's the history of it. And we're going to talk about it. But some of the other ECW matches we've covered, that's the, that's the true ECW, going back in the archives and kind of checking that stuff out. But this is important too, because of what happened after and the behind the scenes stuff. And it's very interesting now, 15 years later, just about being able to go back and see the behind the scenes and what happened. But we got through the build. We need to talk that when we watch the payoff, kind of see what's going on there, and we'll eventually get to that in the aftermath. So, Tom, how about your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, it's so watered down. The thing is that, and we'll talk more about this during the match, but the talent wasn't horrible. So you look at some of these guys, and look, I'm not saying that Mike Knox should have been a world champion, but you look at some of the guys that they put in here. Remember, Kurt Angle was involved for a little bit. Big Show was actually working pretty good at this point. He had some, they did a decent amount with them. Punk, RVD, you go through these, Lashley, you go through these names and you go, if it was presented the right way, you could have taken this roster and done a lot with it.
Yep.
So it's like many other times in the business, including right now, it's not a talent issue. It's a booking and presentation issue.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. So we're in agreement. We're going to start the match. It's in the ECW section of the WWE network. It's 2006, December Dismember. We are going to start this match at the 1 hour and 47 minute mark. 1 hour, 47 minute mark. ECW, December to Dismember. Jeff, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. It's time for the payoff.
Ho! It's time for the payoff.
All right, so we got RVD walking down to the ring. We got the Elimination Chamber in there. looks like the ring's a little like, that chamber just comes right out into the, like the crowd can touch it from there if you look at how close they are. Yeah. It's probably always that way. I've just never noticed it.
And this has got compared to the last time we talked about this match, a little bit of a redesign from the very first time that they did it. And so
what's different offhand? Do you remember?
It's the roof is a little bit lower on this one, and so they can incorporate it a little bit more.
Okay.
And the surrounding, like you and I talked about it, the kind of surrounding, I say steel or kind of the framework around the ring is structured a little bit different. Like we talked about on our previous episode, like it had no give. They were just beating the shit out of themselves when they would kind of do the flips and stuff and kind of land on that outside. And so now it's got at least a little bit more to it. So right away we got the clock on the screen. So 5 minutes until the next competitor. We got Rob Van Dam and Hardcore Holly kind of starting out and things like that. So.
Okay, so this list that I pulled up is a little bit old. This was back from 2013. Bleacher Report pulled up every Elimination Chamber match. They had this as the worst one.
Yep. Okay.
Of 15.
So okay. We're about to find out.
You look at the talent in the ring, and it's supposed to be an extreme one. And who knows if it was? You'd think there'd be like weapons in there and stuff, but no, we'll see. Okay, so they say it's the worst one ever.
So, Tom, this week, or a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, I sent you a link, and we kind of laughed at it at the time to the Save the 2300.
Yes.
Because they're saying that the ECW building, like they're going to, kind of lose. I forget exactly what it was, or kind of, they're going to have to sell the building or whatever it was. At the time of us recording, we don't know what's going on, but because of COVID, they're not able to do a lot of the events and things that they used to. But does someone from ECW step up and buy it? Like, if you're Tommy Dreamer, like, would you want to go back and buy it, or yeah?
How much are they asking for the building? Because I bet you no one can afford it. I can't imagine a building in Philly would be cheap, even if it is the South Side.
So as of recording,
do we know what the building's worth? I know they're asking for like $150,000. Do we know the actual value of the building?
I have no idea. They're asking for $75,000.
Well, they're trying to raise that.
Yes, I do not know the exact kind of what is the what is the building need, or what is the building cost? No.
That I would like to know. I can't. I'm just trying to Google it real quick. I don't know. I'd be curious what the value of that property would be.
You just bulldoze it.
Well, it depends on who buys it, what they want to do with it. But it could be the end of. They've renovated and stuff. It looks so much different inside, anyways.
Well, it's definitely it's not ECW, especially when we had conversation with Francine about the quote locker room, and how that was. I did air quotes. You can't see it at home, obviously, but it was not a locker room by any stretch of the imagination.
So, Hardcore Holly, RVD in there. And we've got Hardcore Holly going to the top. This is probably going to be ugly. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Took a boot. Oh, that must have hurt.
That was not pretty. Yeah.
Like he banged his head off the bottom of the Elimination Chamber.
That's one too. We need to add Hardcore Holly to the list of matches, because we have not ever really talked about Hardcore Holly on the show. So he's one we should add.
Why is there red stuff already on the Elimination Chamber? Do you have any idea? Nobody's bleeding yet, are they? It looks like dried up blood.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Oh. Well, maybe we'll find something's happening. Who knows? But yeah. I see what you're talking about, though. Yeah.
Nice little move there. Hey, so we haven't talked about this. As of this recording, I do not have a PlayStation 5 yet. I'm not a gamer. I did not own a PlayStation 4, but I did own 1, 2, and 3. I had 3 I don't know, I guess 15 years ago. I did not own 4. I don't know why, but I really want a PlayStation 5, and I'm trying to get my hands on one. So are you more of a gamer than me? Are you getting this or the Xbox?
Well, yeah, this is definitely my wheelhouse on this one. Yeah, I have been a lifelong PlayStation guy.
Yeah, same with me. I like the controller more. Like I would never get the
Yep.
Xbox, even if it was way cheaper and people said it was way better. I'm a PlayStation guy.
Me and the guys actually talk about this when we're playing different
Okay.
stuff, and we like anymore. Like for you, it would be a big difference in like kind of like the graphics and kind of how it looks and things like that. For me, I've got like the PlayStation 4 Pro. 4K, like the naked eye, it can only increase so much. And so I think for you, yeah, me and the guys have talked about like wait until like spring, probably be a little bit easier to get. And there's nothing like jumping on me that like I need to play and things like that. Games anymore, they're announced years in advance sometimes. So it's hard to get excited about that shit sometimes. But I do know recently, and we didn't really talk about like AEW has got the like, and you and I did grow up playing like the Nintendo 64 wrestling games.
Yeah.
And they've got like they've got that crew working on their game,
okay.
which is kind of exciting like the N64, like No Mercy, like that was like the classic. And so CM Punk now, timer's up. CM Punk is now the next competitor coming in with a chair.
They had a chair in his pod.
Yep.
He's coming in hot. Looks like $1 million. Long black hair.
Looks young.
Fans. Oh yeah.
Jeez,
well,
yeah.
It was young.
And so,
I was young and less bitter back then.
Right. Yeah. So I'd say, yeah, if you can get your hands on one, you and I,
It's always so funny when you're like, oh, so we were still doing chair shots to the head at this point. Okay.
Yeah. And that just looked terrible, that chair shot. But yeah, I'd say if you can get your hands on one, get one. I will eventually. But it's harder for me to find the time nowadays, too. So even working from home, that's a big show too. We haven't really seen much of him, but he is not at his smallest weight during this match. That's for sure. So
you got RVD and Punk kind of going at it. This is a little bit of like a dream match scenario here. I mean, it's just two awesome guys, two of my all-time favorites.
Well, and this is one too to kind of like point out to everybody. Well, that looked terrible. Kind of like a heel kick or sweep the leg that didn't really work. This is like we said, like a young Punk. This is when Heyman and we'll talk about it after, was riding super high on Punk.
Oh yeah.
They really wanted him to kind of be the next superstar, and so
he was like the first Paul Heyman guy, right?
Yeah, and so we'll kind of see what happens when we talk about the aftermath of this one. But yeah, like
go back to PlayStation. So
yeah, I would say
right,
if you
you're buying one, so yeah, we'll be able to like what? So
yeah,
how's this work?
Connect.
Like, do you connect? Do you like are friends? And then what? Like, do we put headphones on and like
we
talk
would just
shit
like
and
we
play
are
together?
for this? Yeah, we could talk shit and play whatever.
I haven't played a video game in 14 years.
Yeah, we've got that, and
So RVD's bleeding.
Yep, he's
I don't know if
finally
they
bleeding.
did blade jobs then or hard way, but he is gushing out blood. He got a good chair to the head. Punk's working on him.
Yeah, and so I will be getting, and they have the different versions now too. You can get the disc one or like the all digital one.
Which one's better? Why? Just to save the $100?
I think, well, that's just how the medium's going. Like, it's so much easier than having to deal with the disc. And unless you're like reselling it all, it doesn't matter.
So they're the exact same machine. The only reason you would get the disc one is if you had like games from like PlayStation 3 or 4 that you wanted to play.
4, yeah.
Or 4.
Yeah,
okay.
3 wouldn't play, but yeah, you're
okay.
right.
And then if you had whatever, I don't even know, what do they make now? Blu-ray discs or 4K Blu-ray?
Yeah,
so if you bought one of those, but otherwise getting the digital one's perfectly fine is what you're saying.
And that's what I would do. And like, and you're like me, we stream everything anyways on TV. Like we both got multiple Apple TVs and all that stuff. And so
then, all right, I think my last question is, have any wrestling games been announced for PlayStation 5?
So the history of wrestling game, no, this is the short answer. And the WWE games lately have been terrible.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, right? They've sucked.
Yes, they've been absolutely awful.
And they're still made by 2K?
Yes, and it's
2K's made them for what, 4 years, 5 years now?
Years, yeah. And it's because of like every year they got to crank it out. And so if they're going to put out a shit product, that's it. They're on the timeline. It's got to come out and be shit. And so they took a year off in the hopes to make it a little bit better and kind of, we'll see what happens. I think needed.
But like back in the day, like you'd buy Madden every year because there was the new rosters. But now you can just download rosters.
Yeah.
Right? So like, you really don't need any games every year, whether it's wrestling or sports. Like if you bought like a golf game, like why would you need to ever buy a new one, right?
Yep. And my brother is very adamant about this. Like he's on like a 3-year cycle with those games. He'll buy them every 3-4 years because it's just not worth it otherwise.
And then how much do they cost now?
60.
I heard it's the same whether you do digital or disc, right?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you can find like, Amazon or whatever, Best Buy may have like, $10 credit or something. But
let me ask you this.
60 is the base.
Couldn't you argue that it might be better to get the disc because you could buy some like cheap used games and play them?
Yeah, for an older system, that's why. Yes, I absolutely. And so, but like for this newer stuff, like I have no like resell like desire, and so I really wouldn't want to like feel the need to go that route. But yeah, you're right. But that's why like the GameStop business model is going out of business. It's just they're on a lifeline right now because people that's just not the market anymore. Like people don't resell like they used to, and then also like the digital, like literally both Xbox and PlayStation got digital only consoles. So like there's nothing GameStop can do about that. Like they're just a dying model. So here we go. 2-1-0. Next competitor here. All the guys still in the ring at this point. Who's coming? We don't know.
They don't have it labeled. It's a little tougher to see.
Yeah. Unlike nowadays. Yep.
So Test once, there you go.
Does he have a crowbar?
He has a crowbar. Test is hitting CM Punk with a crowbar.
He is jacked.
Yeah. Now he's going after RVD's face with the crowbar.
Using the end of the crowbar. Yikes. Yeah.
Okay. So all 4 guys are still in there. Test, Holly, RVD, and CM Punk. All right. So I got it. So no wrestling games been announced yet. Wrestling games suck now. They need to like blow it up and start over, it sounds like.
Which the AEW one looked pretty good, but there was a quick like couple screenshots of that one, but that's at least a year away, and so that's the problem with some of the like you see it, but then you don't actually get to play it for the better part of a year, so at least yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's just one of those things, but it's one of those areas where I wish I had more time to kind of do some of that stuff, but with life and all this other things, it's tough. But it's definitely a good release outside of the many hours a week that we can watch wrestling. It's nice sometimes to throw that stuff on the iPad and just kind of be playing something and have it on in the background when you got nothing else going on. Like that's what I'll do a lot of these nights if I'm like doing notes or kind of, creating graphics for the show is, throw on the wrestling and do that as the side gig. Some nights, put on the wrestling and play a game of some kind. So
yeah. Okay.
You got Rob Van Dam, really, God, been doing this for so long. Like he looks.
I was gonna say, let me ask you this: like, did RVD was he ever not really good at his career? 5-star Fog Splash on Punk. Don't tell me they're gonna eliminate Punk already. No, don't put Punk out before Test and Holly.
Here we go. 1.
Punk's the first guy out.
Punk's the first guy out. Yeah,
it's absurd.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, he is. And I will say, like, Michigan guy as well, too. So Rob Van Dam, so making that claim. But he's really had, like, no downtime ever.
He's always looked good. He's always been, like, active.
He was in, and I had forgotten, he was actually Robbie V in WCW back in like 1992. And so like forever ago, but really, and then he had a little bit of time, I say time off. He literally wasn't wrestling but from 1996 until now, like he's been out there, like he's wrestled.
It just flipped off Big Show.
He's getting on top of the cage the pod that the Big Show's in. Oh, shit. And Big Show grabbing him through the top of it.
That looks awful.
And one of the few people that can actually pull that off. Yeah, and he's still in the Impact Wrestling and kind of wrestling there with them. And so
RVD is just getting the shit kicked out of him.
This whole match, yeah. And so positioning himself. Now he's got a chair on his face.
Test is going up to the pod. RVD with a chair on his face.
Now you got
no way. Yeah. Elbow drop. Wow.
That was
That's got to be it.
He hit it.
1, 2, 3. So in this match, by far, the two best performers are the first two out, and you haven't even gotten Big Show and Lashley in here.
And where's Hardcore Holly?
Terrible. Holly's still around somewhere. I mean, this is terrible booking. Like to me, like if you book, like the way you book this or the way you'd want it to go would be, it comes down to RVD and Punk and they just tear down the house, right?
Well, and the storyline at the time was RVD and Big Show was like the big feud going into this, and like they weren't even in the ring together.
Wow.
So it's hard to even like I'm looking at this too. So they've got like the graphics and they're showing the replays right now. How desperately does WWE need a refresh of like just the production?
Yeah.
Like, I get Kevin Dunn has been doing it forever, but man, like to get some actual people in there that, are different, have some new insight, have a little bit, just different.
That's the problem. And I think, I was thinking about this recently, like everything's just presented the exact same way. Like on SmackDown looked the exact same. The graphics look the exact same. The camera angles are everything's the exact same. And it's been that way forever.
Well, and wasn't it recently like the quote new season started? Like, can we get a better announcement for that? Like, let me know, hey, if I get something to look forward to, and like you and I have been advocates of this for a while now, like reset it things. Like, okay, and mid-January we're gonna start some new storylines. We're gonna bring you some new things. We're gonna get into the road to WrestleMania. We're gonna talk a little bit about those things. Looks like Lashley next. Yep, Lashley. We have security, mass security now beating up people and preventing Lashley from getting out of his pod.
So they're holding Lashley into his pod to help test.
And test, yep.
Why do I feel like a feat of strength is coming here?
Probably Lashley too, like, in great shape as well too. Some of these guys, like, hard to imagine for 15 years.
How little have they done with Lashley in this like 2-year run that he's on?
It's finally getting a little bit better, but man, like,
you should have brought him in like a monster and put him with Lesnar, even if he lost.
Well, and that's the problem is like they have such an opportunity there, and we always saw like, Vince loves his big guys.
So he broke through the chains with the table. Is that what it looks like?
The table that he has in his pod, which he is now struggling with. Yeah, he broke the chains at the top of his pod, and now he's just climbing out through that. Which, hey, I guess that works. So they've also wasted about 2 minutes on the clock making that. Oh, a minute. Excuse me. Yep.
Felt longer.
Where's Hardcore Holly? Did we miss where he was eliminated? Are you and I like we may have the same match? Like what the fuck
we may have missed it. Unless he's like on the ground somewhere. We missed it.
I don't know what happened here.
Hardcore Holly was eliminated, and your favorite co-hosts missed it. I apologize.
Man, we are. But I think that speaks to what you and I are watching right now and dealing with.
It's not that bad.
No, well, a little bit. Like we missed it. He got eliminated on that one.
So in an old school ECW, how freaking awesome would CM Punk have been?
Oh man,
can you imagine him? And I know he had a feud in Ring of Honor with Raven, but can you imagine CM Punk and Raven?
Oh, just so many of those people. Yeah,
all of them. I mean, can you imagine him in that style? Like in that environment, I mean, he could have been the biggest heel, or he could have been the biggest babyface, right?
Oh, and you could have run just long storylines with him being like, figure like the straight laced, like no nonsense and being the face and under those terms, but then also in ECW, like, yeah, absolutely. Like that'd be just great to see. And so,
I mean, we did CM Punk and RVD, like, come on, even if they had done this version of ECW, like the way Shane McMahon wanted to do it, which was online only, hardcore, small venues, that's how you could have brought Punk into things. He would have been incredible. And again, think of it like if they used it like NXT, where by the time these guys got to the main roster, they'd be made men.
Well, and or even like, now like the act of the call up isn't even as big of a deal anymore. And like some wrestlers, like you and I, like we don't want them called up, like because
why would you?
Yeah,
they're just going to job out.
Shit on, yeah. The Vince, it's like once Vince has the ability to use them in a storyline, it doesn't matter anymore. There is no storyline for some of these people. So, yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's like Shane just more recently trying to introduce the underground, and kind of it was getting different people different FaceTime, which is important. And so, but to do it like a more, and nowadays, like we could never go back to the ECW of old, but you could do a little bit more. There's your TV 14 program. Like, there's your TVMA even necessarily, and appealing to just a different market of people where they're trying to have this kid-friendly product right now. Like in a lot of ways, it turns you and I off, like, and so, but, having that ability to do something a little different with something like that, like, yeah, put Punk or pick some superstars that, can carry that brand. I'd watch that show.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just everything is so similar. It looks the same. It feels the same. Think about it this way. The writers that are writing these promos, it's the same writers, Jeff. So I know writers should be able to write in different voices and stuff like that, but there's only so much variety you can have when you have the same group of people that are writing things.
Right. Oh, and unnecessarily tossed at the table at the Big Show's pod. Yeah. And absolutely. And it's just one of those things where, like you and I have talked about on the show before, like, while the Performance Center is great, everybody's getting trained the same way. Everybody's learning promos the same way. And so to really stand out anymore, it's tough. And how do you do that? Like, you would hope it'd be like your mic skills and your ability to cut a promo. But when, like you said, it's all scripted, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's scripted by the same writers. So how much variety is there? All right, so Big Show's got a barbed wire wrapped baseball bat. Lashley's got the chair.
And we did not point out at the start, this is not just an elimination chamber. It's an extreme elimination chamber, which is why everyone is holding the weapons. And so that's what makes this more extreme than, and makes it ECW a little bit more than your regular. He is huge right now. Oh boy, that was.
So we've got your ECW champion, Big Show, and Lashley.
And Lashley, Big Show swinging with the bat, but Lashley blocking it with the chair that he has.
Oh, the barbed wire baseball bat is out of play.
Yep.
Lashley's hitting him with the chair.
And so, yep, there you go.
Ugh. So Lita left the WWF around this time.
Okay.
And she was pissed at her send-off at Survivor Series. She said it sucked, and she was very disappointed. I bet in 2006 she didn't think she'd still be working 14 years later, and including some arena matches, or like stadium shows, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what, and I have that one. Oh, and there, again, as we have to have a through the pod spot.
Big Show goes through the pod, took
bleeding.
A nice little blade job to the forehead. Lashley's on top of him, getting him nice and bloody.
It's just like that spot. It almost like it's so predictable. Like you almost like, they should almost make like the joke out of it now that like, that you're going to have someone go through one of the pods in some way.
So this is probably not the best analogy, but I'm not like a massive music person. So basically like this version of ECW would be like if, Marilyn Manson like switched to like country music. Right.
It's funny.
Like, it's like you just strip away like someone that's like known for just their whatever vulgarity or their just absurdness. And then, and they're trying a little bit here, but it's not gritty enough. The style's not gritty enough. It's WWE produced. It's got a big entranceway. It's got an arena crowd.
It's funny you say that because there's a radio station in Detroit where I grew up. Like it was 89X. It was based out of Windsor, Canada. And
I love Windsor.
And so, yeah, that's right. You know, drinking age a little bit younger. So we'd always go over there when growing up and things like that. And so we go over there and drink. But 89X, for as long as I've been alive, was always like alternative rock or just like rock and things like that. They just all like on like a Wednesday, they announced that they were changing like what the station was going to be doing on like Thursday. And then the next day it was country. Like, and like to your analogy, like that shit, like, yeah, they totally like blew up 30 years of like the brand that they had and went country, which fine. I'm a fan of country music, but to your point, yeah, it's that you stripped away like, and now forever, that's, you know, what it's going to be. And so, you know, ECW, like it's just totally, it's a shell, you know, it's unrecognizable, you know, compared to what it was.
So Lashley with a spear.
1, 2, 3. That's it. I missed Test getting eliminated too.
I did too. We both missed it.
We were talking through this one. And so Lashley beating the Big Show to become W champ. Yep.
Okay.
The fans say celebrating. Yep.
Great. All right. Actually, the match was not that bad.
The match itself was not. I agree with you.
The match is not that bad at all. All right, so go ahead.
Nope,
ready?
That's it. Yeah, let's just get into it.
All right, it's time for the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
All right, what'd you think?
So the match itself was not terrible. And I'm sure someone's going to disagree with us, but like, it's weird because we say that and we missed a few of the elims, but over like the product itself was not terrible. And so, but you know, and so I was perfectly, I thought the ring work was perfectly adequate. I think that's the best way I can describe it. What about you?
I thought it was a decent match. A decent match, entertaining throughout. The problem I had, I'll get more into this, but you just the wrong guys were in there later on. Like Punk and RVD should have been working a lot longer, right? So all right. So hit us with aftermath, and I'm curious what the reviews are, and then I'm looking forward to sharing what we thought.
So we've got the, you know, how this kind of, some of the, you know, I'll get into some of the write-ups right away. It's what was supposed to be a 3-hour event clocked in at just 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Okay. I had that would not be two. So my official time was off.
And even like it's 2:14 on the network and it's going off. So that would not be a major deal in today's era with the WWE network, but fans have shelled out over $40 to see this, and WWE shortchanged them. So really, you know, so you've got Lashley as a champion kind of leaving this one, but Paul Heyman and even the Big Show and like some of the behind the scenes of how this played out after, both of them really wanted Punk to win this one. And so some of the things that I was reading that now, you know, at the time we had, you know, the rumors, but now we know a little bit more, was the idea was for Punk to go over the Big Show and then let him be the standard bearer for ECW.
And he was, and Heyman wanted him to tap out to the Anaconda Vice as well.
And so, and at this point, of course, like, you know, Vince owned ECW, so he could do what he wanted here. And in the meeting, the quote that I kind of found on this one is, "Oh no, Big Show, Big Show, Big Show. Lashley, I'm going to make this my own. Paul, shut up." And so that was the quote that I found. You know, who knows the truth to it, but it was in one of the ECW, you know, the uncensored ECW history, things like that. And so, but you know, Vince putting his stamp on it, and that's just kind of how it was. And so, but you know, really, Big Show and Heyman saw the momentum that Punk had because he was at this time kind of, you know, being a big thing. And so for a lot of this, and so much of it was because Big Show was leaving a little bit after this too. He was actually offered a long-term contract, but so it would have made even more, and he didn't take it. It would have made even more sense for Punk to take, you know, beat the Big Show in that way and kind of put him over like that. You know, like we always talk about, like, you know, the veterans kind of going out on their back and things like that. And this is one where they tried to do it and they couldn't. And so, you know, and really it was this, and it was interesting because Big Show and Lashley had a rematch, the two of them. It was the ECW the following week, and Lashley won that one, and their feud was over. And so, if you had slated Punk instead of Lashley, it just makes sense in so many ways. It's almost like crazy. So now, Tom, I'm going to guess you don't know the answer to this one off the top of your head.
All right, hit me with it.
Proving just kind of like, how Vince was treating the product and what he thought about the product. Do you have any idea who won the title after Lashley?
I know Christian held it. I know Tommy Dreamer held it. I don't know. When you say it, I'm probably going to be like, oh, yeah, I remember. But go ahead. Who was it?
Vince.
Oh, that's right.
And so Vince actually held the title for a little bit after this. And then he actually held it for the better part of a month. And then Lashley winning it back in a street fight at One Night Stand. So just, a little over a month. But either way, so it's just kind of crazy. And then after that, the title was vacated. And so it really just how it played out after this it's almost like gross, like Vince kind of how he was playing it, and kind of dealing with that. Now, part of what happened after this, though, was that Paul Heyman, I'll just say, was let go. He was sent home. And so blaming it on the ratings and as the quote said, disgruntled talent roster as causes for Heyman's dismissal. So there's mixed stories. There's all kinds of things out there. It's one of those that will forever live in, kind of the history of wrestling. But Heyman was just escorted from the arena. He was sent home. He was pulled off of the creative team. Vince the whole time trying to put the blame on Heyman for just how poorly received the pay-per-view was, because it was. And then he legitimately, I say, left WWE, but he was still under contract. So, that so much of it, I think, was just Vince planting his flag on this. We've seen it with different superstars like Rusev, he didn't like Rusev Day, he didn't like the fans kind of picking the path they wanted him to go. And now Rusev's not even with the company anymore, and so, it's Vince just being Vince. There's no other way to put it, and God, hopefully that, that documentary digs into some of this stuff, or not the specifics of this, but just kind of his psyche, because who knows, we'll see where we get. But, that was that was it. Heyman was gone. The feuds kind of ended. You had all these different things just kind of playing out, and Punk, it just sitting there that, he didn't go over like he should have. This eventually did come up, though, of course, in the pipe bomb, that, Heyman seeing something in him, that was a big part of this. This also burned, behind the scenes, a lot of the other ECW wrestlers. You had Tommy Dreamer and Stevie Richards both wanting out of their contracts as well, too. Sabu, as we said even before, wasn't happy with this event. So really a lot of the behind the scenes turmoil of kind of trying to keep people happy. And Heyman, this was 2006. He was gone for another 6 years until Brock came back, or he came back with Brock in 2012. And so, just one of those. And it was actually, and I had forgotten, John Laurinaitis was actually Brock's kind of mic person. And then because Brock didn't like the promo that he was cutting. Right. He brought Heyman in. And so, I had forgotten about that. And so, but, just a lot of, I say, backstage kind of the politics of it, and Vince being Vince, I think, in a lot of ways, it's really how it played out. And so, Tom, your thoughts on all of this and just how it, how it kind of just crumbled.
Yeah, it was just chaotic. I mean, the talent was there, but again, Vince needed his hands on it. It ended up being a WWE light programming with the same booking, the same style. It wasn't hardcore. Could ECW have been successful in a rebirth in 2006? No question. Look no further than NXT. What do you think NXT is? It's the same thing. If you would have been able to put ECW in a small venue, broadcast online or broadcast on a different network or broadcast at night, and you mixed in some of the young talent with some of the ECW originals, it didn't have to be blood and guts and guys getting crucified, but it could have been some good hardcore, just great wrestling. I mean, remember some of those best ECW matches were, guys like Dean Malenko and Chris Jericho. So RVD, Jerry Lynn. I mean, it wasn't all garbage shit. So you could have presented it. It could have been awesome. And I wish they would have done it because, you might have gotten what is now NXT a lot earlier back then, where it would have been an opportunity for some of these young guys. Like in an ECW back then, Gargano, Ciampa. I mean, you go down the list of guys, imagine like a Revival that was in an ECW. They would have tore down the damn house. It would have been awesome. So, what could have been, my friend? What could have been?
Yeah, we'll never know. But okay, so ratings. Where are we at on this one? Like we said, so I kind of went through everybody in this match. You had Lashley was 51, Big Show was 44, and this is PWI. Big Show 44, Test 253, way down the list. That's probably one of the lowest ones we've ever had. RVD was 18, I feel like every time we talk about him, he's always pretty high on this list. Hardcore Holly was not ranked, and CM Punk was 35, and so he was kind of right there. So some of the write-ups themselves and what we got here, that Slam Sports at the time rated this 4 out of 10 and said the 2 matches that were promoted saved this thing from being a debacle. And then did Vincent Heyman draw names out of a hat to make those matches? Nothing really made sense to me. And that's exactly what you said at the start of this. Like, the card was just nonsense, except for this. And even then, it was still just kind of a mess on how it was booked. And so Wade Keller wrote on this one, the event was such a letdown overall that it really dampened the mood and thus the occasion of Lashley winning the title. I wonder if you and I had watched a few more matches on this one, if you and I would feel different with our scores once we get to that.
Yeah.
So the Wrestling Observer newsletter, their awards for 2006, this was the worst wrestling show of the year. And they gave it, but interesting, he gave it, this match, 2.5 stars. He said, this was almost without question the worst promoted pay-per-view in company history. WWE has 3 brands featuring mostly brand-exclusive talent. And as a result, when you've got a smaller roster of stars, as is the case with ECW, and 6 of those stars are in one main event, filling out an undercard is a bit harder. It's
that's a good point. Like,
yes.
I understand the attraction of Elimination Chamber. I mean, hell, even if, like a one way you could have like booked this show, and I don't know, maybe what would have been cool is if you had 6 matches and each one was a qualifier into this Elimination Chamber for the title or something, like I'm just thinking of ways you could have put some of these guys. I mean, would anyone have complained if you had, an RVD match earlier and a Punk match earlier?
Or even you say, okay, RVD and Big Show are in, we need 4 more.
Something like
so here's how we're doing it. So, which is a good point. So it's not, however, impossible regarding to the booking. It was sad watching the show. It was clear all of the talent, from the announcers to the wrestlers, knew that the writing was on the wall for the brand in its current state. The fans heckled them. It wasn't an old ECW crowd, but it was a pretty hardcore crowd. When 2,300 people show up at a building that seats triple that, those are 2,300 hardcore fans. So, thoughts? You want me to start? You want to start?
Why don't you go?
So the quote that I kind of found that kind of resonated with me the most on this one as I was kind of reading through things and just kind of going through things. So its failings are a reminder of what happens when WWE misreads its fans. The audience wanted a revival of ECW, not a kickoff, not a knockoff of the brand. Fans wanted to see Punk rise, but McMahon stubbornly led Lashley onto the pedestal. As frustrated as Sabu had to be when WWE pulled him from the card, he couldn't have known that the company was saving him from a sinking ship. I think for me, the kind of the failing, what happens when WWE misreads its fans, I feel like that it just happens so often, and especially when they literally had to come out and say, hey, we're listening to the fans. I think there's just been so many things over the years where Vince being out of touch on some of this, and I'll, call him out on this one, specifically, like, just not understanding what the fans want, or, it's the audience of one, as we've heard of over the years, like it's Vince and that's it. And so I'm going to give the match itself, I'm just going to give it a 5 out of 10. Like it's, I like that's middle ground for me. It's just, I don't like, I thought the product itself was good. Like I'm not like jumping out of my chair and to say, I think, I think it's somewhat of a disservice in only watching this match, because everything I've kind of read and like seen is that we had watched this entire, really 2 hours, like we would have not felt the same, and I probably would have scored it lower. And so I'm going to say 5, just this match alone, not by no means the show itself. That's what I'm going to stick with. How about you?
Well, I want to put this match at a 5.5. I just thought it was a decent little 20-minute match. There were some decent spots. I mean, it was fine. I don't want to say it was terrible. It wasn't great. I find it hard to believe that of the first 15 chamber matches, this was the worst. There had to have been something worse in there. It was decent, booking, not that great. I mean, the thing is, this thing could have been like an 8, and it could have been an 8 because, you would have gotten down to Punk, RVD, and Big Show. Okay. Big Show eliminates RVD. And so then it's just, Punk gets the shit kicked out of him and somehow gets the win. The place goes nuts. Everyone goes home happy, and it puts a different spin on the show. Like, yeah, the undercard sucked, but what a badass main event. So 5.5, and I might be being way too generous. I don't know, but it wasn't that bad.
Sending him home happy.
Yeah.
And that's just, maybe it did, but it probably not. So,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, good stuff as always. Yeah. And like we didn't say at the start of the show, because we were doing the rundown, but this, at Payoff Pod, we're on all that social media. You guys can find us just at the Payoff. Check us out, drop us a line, let us know. We're constantly posting things like that. We're going to, approaching the holidays here. We got a little bit of time off, or as I like to say, I know you appreciate taking a little holiday for ourselves. So
I don't know why I laugh every time you say holiday.
For our international fans, showing some love as well too. So we got that out there for us. So send us home, my friend. What do you got?
Not much for you, man. As always, thank you for joining us on another episode of The Payoff.